passed away, we had like the first mechanical part.
Oh, I can't remember that name.
Here in worked in his
The
90s.
Megan Pierce, University of Minnesota Health. University of Minnesota Health. Masonic Memorial Building.
It's not doing persons in.
I don't know if they call this end the same thing or not. Well, there is also, you get on the other side of the river, there's another hospital too.
Carmen, do you know if Chris has a breakdown on the costs of each of the drainage
92 or
92?
I'm sure she does.
Okay.
Okay, it's 9.
Say Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion Derby, a second Smith, approve the minutes and agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
9 a.m., Mary Lou Cleveland, Veterans Affairs, to discuss a possible action quarterly report.
Morning, Mary Lou.
Morning. Okay, this is just going to be a quick report of the activities in my office from April to June of this year. I would say that things are staying very, very consistent in my office. As you can see, I've had 75 office visits. Nursing home and home visits were 11. And then my miscellaneous communication and my telephone calls remain fairly high as well. We did not have any requests for local financial assistance or venture trust fund applications this month or this quarter. And we issued a lot of grave markers and flags, and that's mostly for Memorial Day, everybody needing and wanting them. As far as activities, I was able to attend the Iowa Association of County Commissioners and Veteran Service Officers spring training. That is always just kind of a highlight. It's extremely informative, but I think even more valuable is the networking that I do with the other veteran service officers. I had never been to the Buffalo Center Memorial Day program, so I went there this year, and it is just a really amazing program. If you've never been, I encourage you to give it a try.
That's where we go.
Yeah.
That's where we go every year.
Yeah, it was amazing, and it was also a really good opportunity for me to meet a few more veterans and just get some exposure. I had happened to sit behind someone who said, "Oh, what do you do?" And so then I was able to have a conversation. It turned out the gentleman was a Vietnam veteran. He was a veteran.
Did you go out to the cemetery?
Yes, I did.
A lot of flags, isn't it?
A lot of flags, and it's just really humbling as they read off those names too. It was a very, very moving morning. I was very glad I had went. In June, this was a big highlight too. We had our first home-based Iowa recipient, and it was somebody I'd met in my office, and then we were able to get them the home-based Iowa incentive. So all that hard work with home-based Iowa is already paying off, so we're grateful for that. I did some ads in June, just reminding veterans that there's some new benefits for them based upon conditions that previously weren't assumed to be presumed by the VA. So I think that was very beneficial, again, for some exposure.
Those were well done, too.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I did not have a June report, but at the end of May, we had $277,206 coming into the county from compensation and pension claims. A year ago, that amount was $249,944. So it does continue to increase. The VA is pretty backed up right now. In fact, we just got notice that they expect the backup to continue through 2023. The explanation is they kind of got caught up from COVID, and then this PACT Act. I think, over 100,000 claims on blood pressure, high blood pressure alone from Vietnam veterans. So they are saying that they're going to be backed up. So I got quite a few claims that are just waiting to have a decision. Other than that, I think things are going very well. I've been encouraging word of mouth, and I do have veterans that are coming in saying, hey, I'm going to be sending my friend here, or my brother needs to come in. So that's kind of a cool thing too, is people are getting to know me and then encouraging other people to come in. We're going to be continuing with the KIOW ads as well. So we had our commissioner meeting yesterday, and Troy Thompson's going to work with me on that. So
Good.
things are going well.
What's the status of the state trust fund?
It is back up and running. They have had to change the guidelines. So in order to qualify, it used to be that you had to be under the 300% poverty level, and now it's the 200% poverty level. And they've kind of tightened some of the other requirements just because of what had happened before that, the overspending, and froze the account. So it is available again. However, they're, I think, significantly backed up. They've given us a lot of information that we really need to have our ducks in a row if we want to have it approved, which we tried to do anyhow, but because they've tightened things, we have to look at things a little differently. Any other questions?
No. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you.
Accept the motion to approve the quarterly report.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Derby and a second from Smith to approve the Veterans Affairs quarterly report. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you for your assistance on that.
Yeah, no, I just didn't want to leave you out. 9:05 a.m. Julie Swenson to discuss with possible action semi-annual
There's
report.
just copies for you guys to look at. And then this one would be the one you would stamp if you approve it.
So is it the other part of the year that there would be any delinquent tax collections, or? Because it just says 0 under delinquent taxes.
Right, because right now, we had the tax sale. So that's where the delinquent taxes went into the tax sale.
Okay, and that was after the 1st of July then, or
That was in June.
June?
Mm-hmm. So if you look on the second page, under 4,500, tax sale redemptions.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. So we collected like $59,408 on the tax sale, and everything was sold. So that was nice. We don't have any county held this year. And I probably gave you a lot of information there, but I thought that way you would have things to double check with. Like I still do the cash count the end of June in my office, and then in December we do a cash count too. So, I think you have that page. But that would show the funds to match. Is it on there? This one. The back page would show the cash count that we did and then how I balance it with the financial. And everything came out.
Good.
Yes.
Is our program's working better for things?
Yeah, for some things it is. Yeah,
Still a challenge on
it is a
some.
challenge on some things. Entries are a big thing, you know, the journal entries and Carla can vouch, payroll has been some problems there with payroll issues. But as long as we keep track of that and, you know, get the journals done
Takes
and
extra time, I'm sure.
it does because nobody seems to know how the auditor's office journals work with the treasurer's office journals, and that's from Tyler. And everybody kind of just gets a little upset, but we've figured it out. I think we've been doing really well and stayed on top of it the month of June, and that's why our report is showing as good as it is.
Payroll error.
Yeah, and that was,
It must be a really, really small percent that's off or.
well, that $34 will show up now from the January to June assessment. It was corrected in January, but it still will show up when I do the full 6 months. So in February, we had a clean report.
Do you know why there was the error was there?
We do, and it was extra payroll that was paid out that shouldn't have been, and it wasn't caught. So we're working on getting that
It
cleaned up.
wasn't anything of the computer end of it then or whatever.
Well, what happened was
Well,
the computer, instead of, so on her, what's it called? On her, I can't think of what it's called right now. On her,
Wasn't it on her, the way that she reported it? Or?
no, it was on her shift differential. On her shift differential, instead of giving her 50 cents for her shift differential, they gave her entire salary. So she's having to pay that back right now. So,
Yeah, so we finally figured out between the two offices how to show it in the journals and then clear it out for June and then bring it back, and we'll be dealing with this for another year, right, Carla? Through
so,
next April or something.
I can't remember when it's
Yeah.
done, but
So,
June of '24, I think is when it's done.
yeah.
Well, I don't have any more questions.
Make a motion to approve summary annual report.
I'll second it.
Motion from Smith, and a second from Derby to approve the treasurer's semi-annual report. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
And would you guys prefer to have this early so you can look over it instead of in the morning? Because I can email it to you guys
Yeah,
too.
wouldn't hurt
That
to
would be
email
It'd
it.
be nice if we had it in an email.
Okay,
Even for future reference, it's easy to find through an email.
then on paper. You have one that needs to be signed?
It's down there.
Okay,
Probably do the end of it.
There's a signature page there somewhere.
We
Yep.
all sign it.
Yeah.
yep, you all sign it and.
You closed down the fair the other night then?
Yep, we sure did. Oh, goodness.
I had
And
a
it
lot
was
of good
busy on
conversations
Sunday.
in the booth. I had a lot of good conversations in the booth this year.
Yeah, they were,
It wasn't
Stopping
real
by.
busy around, but just good conversations.
I know you had looked at it before, you want to go ahead and sign and I'll get a copy to my desk.
Thank you.
And Sunday was really busy there too. Oh my goodness, the watermelon feed and the pork feed. They were still doing that probably about 7 o'clock. Yeah, so they were busy. They had a good turnout. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Miners, engineer, will discuss secondary road matters.
Morning.
Mike.
Got a few updates today. The biggest one is the industrial will be starting on the hot in place recycling on R-74 tomorrow morning. They'll probably have flaggers on Highway 9 at 8 o'clock and working with traffic on Highway 9 to get started because they're starting there in R-74 and working south. So they'll have flaggers on R-74 and Highway 9 for a while there. They're gonna work south to the county line and then back up to Highway 9 and then continue north. So probably that first mile get done the first day and see how they go from there.
I had somebody ask me about it this weekend, where they're starting.
Yeah,
They live out that way.
yep,
You
we'll,
said like a mile a day if the conditions are good, right?
2 to 3 lane miles is what they said, so
And there's a pilot car.
there's a pilot car. So they'll set up a closure for the day's work, 2 or 3 miles, whatever they choose, and then run pilot car back and forth on that stretch the whole day.
So they're hoping for really hot weather for this.
Yeah,
Preheating.
the main thing is that we just don't have a lot of wind, which
Oh,
hard to avoid here, but that's what will affect the temperature of the mat more so than the temperature of the air.
I think it's been uniquely less wind this summer, seems like.
It's been uniquely cool, I think. So that project will be going for a couple weeks, so we'll try to have updates sent out. We have a road notification tool people can sign up for. They can find that on our website if they want to be, updated more often. And they can always call our office to get a schedule. Other things, we have bridge lumber on the Hallberg auction tomorrow from our last bridge project. So there's like 8 or 9 lots, stacks of bridge planks, bridge stringers, and caps. People are interested in that, they can bid on that. It's all online.
Is it at the site or on your site?
The lumber's at their site, but it's part of the online
Yeah.
portion of the sale. And then we got job postings for mechanic out. The deadline for that was Saturday. The kind of soft deadline was Saturday, so we have some applications we reviewed yesterday and we'll be moving on to interviews. We'll see how it goes. I have a conference in Cedar Rapids that takes up the entirety of next week, so the International Low Volume Roads Research Conference. Pretty exciting stuff for me, but It's all next week, so we won't be able to do interviews next week, so we'll have to either see if somehow we can squeeze them in this week, or probably gonna be the following week. And then we also have openings in Lake Mills and Buffalo Center that we'll be advertising for some retirements this fall. Bob Yorkland's retiring this fall, and Randy Swab out of Buffalo. So we'll be getting those advertisements posted later, probably early next week, is when they'll come into the papers, and we'll run it on the radio too. Randy ran the snowplow route up to Rake on the blacktop, and then he also has is in the truck also summer hauling rock. We'll see if anybody wants to move around a little bit, and we'll post accordingly. And then Bob ran the blade route along the Minnesota border north of Lake Mills, and ran that similar route in the winter. So we'll be looking to fill those 2 spots in the next couple of months. And lastly, we have probably 85% of the first round of mowing on gravel's done. We have mostly just 1 territory left, and that's because we have 3 mowers and 7 territories, so there's one that's always last, and it happens to be kind of Thompson North and a little bit west, that area up there.
We saw all your yellow pins.
The road to Rake, you can see where the grass has been mowed, the road going into town from the blacktop. But the weeds there have grown so tall, it almost doesn't look like it's been mowed.
Yeah.
I had somebody mention it to me, and I looked at it when the grass had been mowed, because the grass is short, but the weeds really grew up on the side of the road. I don't know can't think of what kind of weed that's called.
Yeah, the wild parsnip is
Yeah,
pretty common. We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I
like
couldn't remember if it had the yellow flowers on it.
even like big blue stem or some of those natives, those will really come on kind of as it gets drier through the summer, and they'll grow after it's mowed.
They must grow a lot faster than the grass.
Yeah,
I assume
and
they got mowed
taller.
off at the same time. So.
Yeah, right. Let's see, that's on the blacktop there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The main road going into Rake.
yeah. They'll get mowed a few more times here this summer. Yeah, I mean, there's not really any keeping up with it. We just got to try and space it out to try and do the most good.
Well, in this case, it might be worth, and I've noticed that weed growing on the shoulder, it's the same one on other.
Sure.
Maybe we should try and spray it and kill it or something.
Let's just declare it a noxious weed, and then we'll take care of it.
Yeah,
That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
all right, anything else for secondary roads?
Nope.
Thanks, Scott.
Consider for approval a utility permit for WCTA to bury fiber optic lines on R20 in Lincoln Township, sections 23 and 33.
Yep, this is basically a service to a new facility up there by Ball Vance's on R20. Routine work. Signature page is on page 3, I think.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the utility permit for WCTA to bury fiber optic lines in R20 in Lincoln Township, sections 23 and 33.
I'll second it. Thank you.
Peterson's have equipment sales there, I believe.
They just built that.
New building, they got farm equipment sitting out in the yard and for sale. Similar to what they got on I-16.
I
10
think
miles down the way.
At some point, they're coming, it'll all be out here, I think, is what thought I heard their plan was gonna be.
A lot of traffic, probably a good spot.
Yeah,
Approval, your money's already signed.
It just needs some.
yeah, I think that, let's see, I made the motion, did somebody second it?
I second.
You seconded, all right, motion Jezreel, second Derby, to approve the utility permit for WCTA to bury fiber optic lines in R20 in Lincoln Townships 23 and 33, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Colin has joined.
Okay, auditor's office will discuss drainage matters,
I don't have anything that's not on the agenda.
okay? Anybody else?
No. Do 9 maybe.
Yeah, we'll go to 9, open forum.
You're welcome.
You have anything for open forum?
Oh, sorry. I was,
Preoccupied.
We did it. We thought.
I was too busy in my own thoughts. That's just supposed to go. That's all I have today.
No hog site permits, huh?
No?
How boring. Well, we still got a few minutes here.
I can give you the ambulance things. Not that we have time to talk about it, but I can pass them out. That'll waste some time. Let me just take this back.
So have there been comments back from either the city or FCAS?
Not that I know of. I haven't received anything. Kelsey said that she hasn't received anything either from anyone, so.
9:30 AM, discussion with possible action, DD 92 improvement project.
Colin, you're on, aren't you?
Yes, yep. So, and I assume you've got copies of the July 12th letter.
I don't have, I have the June
July,
28th and June 7th.
I got July 10th.
I can go make some copies.
I can too.
What's that?
I said I can too. I have it
I
right
think
here.
I picked mine up last week and took it with me. Didn't have my bag with.
Have you guys thought about more, you landowners, have you thought about more of what you want to do or what's happening?
I don't have, I can't remember, did he comment in there that he might be, Colin would be favoring the ditch, but he'll tell us in a minute probably.
What were you thinking, Colin?
Yeah, so basically after last week, what I did is I went and got prices for corrugated metal pipe. So instead of the reinforced concrete, just to see what it would be. And it is cheaper, but it's still quite expensive. So just as an example, if we were replacing, if we just were going to take out the existing 48-inch culvert and put in a 60-inch culvert, be it RCP or CMP, we're talking $264,000 for the RCP and $211,000 for CMP. So it's still pretty expensive. And if you look at this modified open ditch option, if we can get an open channel, obviously that's the best, but you got to balance that with the sand on the banks. Is it going to hold up? How much maintenance is there going to be? That sort of thing. But just looking, just kind of comparing, I've got an overall anticipated range of potential costs, which is a mouthful. But basically, if we did this widened, flattened bank channel, and then worst case scenario, I figure, is that we have to rip wrap both banks the whole way. That would add $50,000, and then if we did 100 feet of CMP in that narrow, at the south end, there's a narrow spot between the Hog's Back Ridge and the road that we can't widen the ditch out because there's just not room. So if we had to, if it just won't hold up there and we have to put in a short section of culvert, basically, if we did all that stuff, we'd be at $210,000 versus just replacing the whole thing with 5-foot diameter CMP, $211,000. And a ditch is preferable, and if the worst case scenario, you know, that we're anticipating is $210,000 down to $125,000. You know, I think that's where I'm at, is I think we should try the modified open ditch. Obviously, there's uncertainty with that we've talked about before as to what exactly will be needed, but that's why I'm giving a pretty wide range, because if things are looking pretty good, like it's going to hold up, then we don't have to do as much. But worst case scenario, if we have to do some of these extra things, it could end up being over $200,000. So that's kind of where I'm still at, is that the CMP was not cheap enough for me to just think, well, it's so much cheaper that we should just forget the channel and do that. But it is cheaper than reinforced concrete.
My opinion is it's not cheap enough to maybe favor the metal culvert.
Yeah, we were hoping for like a third of the cost or whatever,
Yeah.
so.
And I don't know what grade pipe he's using, you know, I would hope he can get more than 40 years of lifetime out of it. A lot of this steel culvert today, boy, we put an outlet pipe in and in 15 years, it's about headed.
Right, yeah, that would be a concern. And as far as just looking at the thickness needed for strength-wise, I believe it was 16 gauge.
With the concrete.
But of course, and we got quotes on stuff that's thicker, but of course that goes up quite a bit in price as you get, you know, you put more steel into it.
Yeah, for that cost.
And I suppose it's even better if it's coated. That really gets expensive, I would assume.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be easier than just to do the concrete?
But that's really high priced.
Someone said it was 40.
I can't believe that a guy can't make this ditch work
That's the best case
at the
scenario.
price that they bid it at. I agree that there's gonna be improvements by flat earth banks and everything to make it work. But if they're getting, I don't know how many more cubic yards it's gonna take to run flatter slopes. But they've got a bid item for X amount of dollars on per yard.
Can you, instead of the pipe, if the ground is good in the narrows there, can you go back to the steeper slope?
Yeah, that's what we do. Our first attempt there would be to dig the steeper slope channel through that narrow corridor. Because we did, like we've talked before, we did dig a test hole there, and it is better material. Now, is it perfect? Is it blue clay? No. But it may be good enough. It was just a test hole, so we didn't see everything. But it's quite a bit better than the fine sand that we were seeing further to the north. So that's our hope, is that we can dig the channel with the steeper slopes where we have to because we don't have room, and then flatten it out in the areas where it's the worst of the sand.
In that narrow area, how deep would that be with a bank?
It's about to the bottom of the ditch. It'd be about 13 feet deep, 12 to 13.
So down the road, if we did have a slough, it wouldn't take much to go in there and clean that out.
If you have a slough, then you'd probably rip wrap it.
Right. But still, it's not a real expensive project to clean it out, but we'd have to rip wrap it.
Right, and that's something too. Like, we're talking about all these things that could end up being put in there, and especially in the areas that we talked about this. If we could just, if it's looking halfway poor, we might end up putting riprap, especially on the worst areas on the roadside just to make sure we don't, because if you have a big slough, we don't want to start threatening the road. So we kind of, some additional protection on that side might be worthwhile depending on what we see. And then, but on the other side, maybe it's worth just waiting and seeing. You know, instead of spending $25,000 on riprap to put on the east bank, maybe we wait. And if it becomes a problem and there's spot problems, then you can come back. I mean, I know that's inefficient, but it would save $25,000 right now on something that's getting more and more expensive. Those are all conversations I think that will have to be had, or decisions that'll have to be made as we go. If we do this, if we try the ditch. But honestly, at this point, I anticipate that we'll be putting some riprap on the roadside. On the other side, unless it's just terrible and will not hold up, I really don't anticipate putting a lot. We might, if we end up digging the channel through that narrow corridor where the steeper banks, we might line both sides with riprap for that, just to give some additional protection, because there's not much room if there's a slough and the ditch kind of widens out, there's not, like I said, there's not much room there. And so we don't want it to be sloughing. We don't want it to start eating into that hill, into that ridge, and we don't want it to go to the road, of course.
Well, I think for sure we need to protect that road side, because we really don't need to have a issue with secondary roads. Do you have a comment about it at all, Scott?
All I can tell you is that we have ditches running along roads all out throughout the county, and they have periodic problems, some of them worse than others. And most of them I wouldn't characterize as sandy. So I would expect we'll have some maintenance pretty intensely in the first few years here. And the other thing to think about is this road moves significantly already. It's got certain parts of it that are real wonky, and we've had to patch several times. So that could happen. I can't tell you if it will. They're just risks, like Colin said. There's a lot of risks here to assess as we go.
Yeah.
If we replace it with pipe, I think that risk is mitigated at the cost of the district. So I think for the sake of the road, pipe would be better, but overall benefit and cost to the district and the landowners, I can see why a ditch would be the preferred method.
Collins, I was wondering, how come the ditch couldn't have been dug up where the tile is now? Where the culvert going through there? So it would have been farther away from the road.
So with this modified option, it was, okay. When we initially designed it, the reason for that is to try to save excavation costs. I mean, the pipe actually kind of curves around, and we did the ditch in a straight line along the road. And so it was to go a shorter distance, to have less excavation amount, and therefore lower cost. But of course, that was assuming that the material underneath was going to stand up just fine, which turned out not to be the case. So that was the thinking initially. But with the modified option, we would have to, because we'd flatten out the banks, we would have to push it more closer to where that pipe is now. we'd have to push it away from the road some in the areas where we're flattening the bank. And that would end up being a couple thousand more cubic yards of excavation than what we had initially had in the bid.
Colin, do you believe the contractor will have to dig that west slope from the east side? Can he see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be something, I mean, they kind of know what they're doing, but that'll be a discussion we would have, is that they're going to have to do that. I mean, the modified ditch will get pretty wide if we're at 3-to-1 slopes. And so they would have to start by digging that and then back up, because if they try to dig it all together, I don't know if even a long reach can reach to the other side of that. I haven't calculated. That'd be 3 times. Yeah, a long reach couldn't reach to the other side of that. It's from top to top. It could be, 80 some feet.
How wide a bottom are you anticipating? Whatever.
We're a 12-foot bottom is what we're wanting to do in the area with sand, and the design bottom of like the rest of the ditch is like a 6-foot bottom, and so we'd be widening it out for that stretch. And the goal, in part, is to give a wider bottom, a bigger channel, so that when and if a large storm event comes through and there's a lot of water through that stretch, it can slow the water down because it's a larger channel, the velocity is lower, and that's helpful when it comes to sand. I mean, if you got some torrent coming through there and you've got this fine sand, it's going to start cutting. So if we can slow the water down by widening, making the channel bigger there, that'll help.
Is the ditch they got out there right now, how close to being to the bottom are they? Is it 3 feet deeper?
I think, so we never went down in their channel and measured it, but I think they're about 8 feet deep or thereabouts. So I think it's another 3 or 4 or 5 feet beyond that. At the very north end, when they first dug that, the first, 50 or 100 feet, they dug that to grade. I mean, what it was supposed to be at. Maybe some of that is silted in with some of the sand from the channel to the south. But that was dug to grade initially. And that's something, when and if they end up digging this, I don't know that they're going to be able to just go out there and just dig it out. Because what we found, it's not only that it's just sand, but it's saturated sand. And it's just like, wet concrete. It flows around and moves. It's just slop. And so you kind of got to dig some, but you can't just dig a 5-foot deep, extra deep, because it'll all slough off because it's saturated. You might have to do a little bit and then let the water drain out, and then dig a little bit more and let the water drain out.
So they probably wouldn't do any side slopes on the east side until they get the bottom made. So they can try.
I'd say probably, yeah.
East side.
Yep.
Chris, did you have anybody contact you about this week or?
They just wondered when the next meeting was coming.
Was the one that emailed me, was that 89 or was that 90?
Yeah, that was different.
That's 89, okay.
What do you think, Gordy? Think we should let the engineer decide what to do, he's the educated one.
Have
He's
we
the
got
one
someone
that'll
to
get the
blame?
blame if
There
it's
you
wrong.
go, yeah.
Larry, what do you think?
I'm okay with either option. I guess probably the open ditch is the thing to try because we have the potential to save a little money, but I think we need to do something. Either one would be all right with me.
Yeah, I think we should try the open ditch. Riprap just the side by the road to start off and then add as needed.
Because once that ditch is dug, there's no room on the roadside to do it, sit a machine. Is that correct? Pretty much?
Well, there is room, but the electric pole wires, the overhead wires, make it a problem. So essentially, there's not room because of that. Yeah, that's even more reason to just start out with putting riprap on the roadside because it's going to be hard to get in there to do something if there is an issue.
What do you think, Gary?
I think Colin should make the call. I don't want to take the blame for it. But I like the ditch idea better.
And I like at least the riprap on the roadside to protect it.
But are we gonna just leave the old pipe, not spend the money to crush them, or is there any reason to?
So that's, yeah, I don't know exactly where it is every foot of the way, but as much as possible, we're going to try to leave that alone.
Good.
And that way, if something really bad started happening, it wouldn't be too hard to get that going again. Like, and try to start diverting water back through that pipe if there's something bad happening in the channel. I don't know how that'll all work, if that'll even be possible, but ideally we have to crush it on the south end a little bit.
Remove it.
Or remove it, or, yeah.
Just
And then in the middle, we're hoping we can just leave it all in place. I hope we don't have to take some out, like, in the middle of it all, because that'll ruin the whole thing.
So what about the pipe then? What's everybody think on just like a pipe upgrade? Is that something
For that 100 feet, you
for the
mean?
100 feet, yeah. I mean, do you think
He's
it's
hoping he
worth-
won't need that.
We're hoping, yeah, that's what we're hoping, is that we don't need that. But I have it in there just so it's a possibility, and if we do, that way at least everyone's aware of what the cost could be if we have to do that.
The 100 feet.
Mhm.
Yep.
But does this group want the RCP or the CMP, or does that have to be decided?
I think we cross that bridge if we get there. I think that they've decided at this point that they just want to try to do the open ditch.
Well, but to
Right.
save another meeting.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If this group can decide this now,
Yeah, then we don't have to
then we
meet
can
again.
proceed.
It'd be 43,000 versus 30,000.
Yeah, it's another 13.
And then I suppose it's the availability of them. The contractor don't wanna wait 2 months to get a certain size pipe or a certain pipe.
Yeah, the CMP supplier I talked to said 2 weeks lead time. RCP, I didn't check with them last week. I would probably guess that would be at least a month. And I would hope that 100 feet they might have something like that on hand. It's not a large amount, so they should, even if they don't, they should be able to fit it into their schedule. But RCP has been notoriously bad as far as delays from suppliers in getting materials.
So just, are you thinking just whatever is available at the time?
I suppose I got 100 feet in my yard.
I was just gonna say, you must have some back behind the building
What's the
somewhere.
price?
And that's at the old place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather you buy new.
Is
And
that
these
the-
are new, basically.
Do you want the RCP or the CMP?
It doesn't matter. Whatever easier for the contractor to get the job done and get out of there.
Okay.
Well, but then you were saying that the metal may not last for a while.
Well-
Do you just go with this?
And would it be that you only use 60 feet? Probably not, huh? Because there's no reason that's ever gonna be used for a driveway or anything. For access to
Right.
the woods.
We could field fit that. I mean, the 100 feet was based on me looking at the plans and saying, okay, here's where that ridge is, and how much length do we need to safely avoid it with some. Obviously, I don't want to undershoot the price. I want you to be aware of what it could be. So there's possibility that we could do less than 100 feet. I guess the point is on a lot of this stuff is we're going to have to field fit. And we're going to try, if we do this modified open ditch option, the overall goal is to try to make this a success without unnecessarily, spending money or wasting money.
I agree.
That's why
I
I
think
think that the time, we have to cross the bridge when we get there.
Yeah,
I don't think we can make that decision right now.
no.
But then if it takes a long time to get, if we have to decide again, then we just delay the project even more. Because then we have to have another meeting.
No, but can't you decide today? It's either one.
Yeah, with possible action. In
Yeah.
fact, I think we're to the point of making that motion. I will make the motion to do that open ditch as we've discussed.
The modified open
With the
ditch.
modified open ditch it's going to be an ongoing decision-making process when they're in there. I think it's time for
Either
us
one.
to make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Motion Smith and second from Derby to, as stated, so I'm trying to remember all that.
Move forward with the
We might have to
modified
work on
open
that
ditch.
motion.
Yeah.
At
Option
minimal
three.
cost, if
Yeah,
possible.
yeah. All in favor, say aye.
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 So to clarify, you're going to widen the open channel. You're going to add riprap to one ditch bank. We are going to wait and see what we need, any kind of pipe. And order that as needed from the contractor.
Yeah.
That sounds
And
right.
I will remind everyone that, we're talking about estimated costs and everything, but all of these things, if there's any changes to the contract for what was bid, that's going to have to be approved as part of a change order anyways. So, the actual real contract changes will have to come via change order. So there'll be an approval process for that.
Yep. Good.
When can they get back in there and start trying to get something done?
Well, I'm gonna talk with them. I know they've, in talking with them over the last several weeks, they were anxious to, if there's gonna be more work, if it wasn't gonna be abandoned, they were anxious to get going on it. So I'm gonna talk with them, this morning yet, and kind of get coordinating and see when they could get back out there. And I'll get to work on a change order for at least the stuff that we've agreed to this morning. I won't put in there for any of the pipe.
Okay,
Sounds good.
that sounds like a plan.
So, just a quick question, do you think with all the rain we've had, they're gonna have some more issues with it being too wet?
No, if it's wet, it's always wet, that stuff, it seems like.
So,
If you're
and that was
doing
one
that
reason
stuff-
why we had them dig out that partial channel that they did, is to try to let, like, it looked like there was a spring or something there, and it was just wet, and it just kept running water even though it was dry. And so the goal is to try to let as much of that drain out as we could. There could still be some of that though, if they dig deeper, and they might have to let some more drain out. You'll just have to see.
Okay. Well, at least we're moving forward.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, you don't wanna beat this horse again next week?
Nope.
Time to make it happen.
Yep, thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Colin.
Thanks,
Yep.
Tom.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Alrighty,
Colin.
Has left.
thank you. Alright, number 8, discussion with possible action, 28E agreement with Winnebago County, City of Forest City, and Forest City Ambulance Service.
Well, I can tell you that the ambulance accepted, the board voted, we accepted the 2080 with the changes that we talked about that day. City council met last night, and I know they are wanting to reword some things in there. But their attorney's gone on vacation, so I think that's why Daisy didn't show up today, after I visited with her a little bit, so. Seems like there really wasn't much they could do, so I'm assuming once their attorney gets back, then they're gonna have the changes redrafted, and I suggested just talking direct to Kelsey,
Sounds good.
but I think they were wanting their attorney to look it over or something first, so,
Yeah, that those two can talk.
yeah. So,
Yeah, and then if it's something of concern with Kelsey, she would.
yeah, and I said kinda keep Kelsey in the loop, I said she's kinda the one doing the writing for at least Forest City Ambulance in the county, so if there's anything real alarming to Kelsey right off the gate, she can squash it. That's all the excitement I got for that.
So no action.
So we see something else.
Mhm.
And you didn't have any opinions on that ditch
No,
project?
no, I'm wondering, is it gonna be long enough we can go float down the ditch and on a
Oh, it's
tube?
gonna be a white rod
It's gonna be
raft in
wide
there.
enough.
I mean, can we do like a little bit of canoeing or something down this ditch, or?
Well, right now, if you go out to the raging, Buffalo Creek,
Yeah.
I mean, that's some pretty good whitewater rafting there
Go
too.
float
so
down there
it's,
too. You're gonna pick me up at the end?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah, we got a bus.
On a bus?
Gonna hook all the inner tubes together and.
Oh, we digress.
Alright, yeah,
I just through a half an hour of drainage for that.
Well, I wanted to bring something up in open forum too.
alright, we'll go back to open forum. We've already done
Oh,
that.
you already were done with that?
Alright.
I was just wondering, what are, moving forward with the vehicle, how are we making with the 70,000 that we got from the mental health board that's in the trust fund? How are we going to handle that, or where is that at in the mix of the world, I guess? Are we needing to get started on something like a lease agreement? My worry is we've got a year to spend the money, and it could take a year to get some of the stuff. You know, I think we gotta get looking
Well,
at,
you can always, I think you could actually prepay a vehicle.
I'm sure you could, but
I guess the way I understood.
That's not acceptable. Our external auditors will not let us pay for something unless we have it in our hands.
Okay.
so I'm getting nervous at the point where, cause we got the money in what, probably May or June, I would guess. So, you know, we're ticking through a couple months already, and if we're looking at a while to get a vehicle, we've got the Lucas device, we could pay for that, but I didn't know, like, I just wanted to get, I'm not saying we need it today, but I just wanted to get a direction if we need to be
have
working on
Kelsey
something.
draft some type of an agreement, a lease, or a something. So we need to have Kelsey put that together, right?
The lease on the vehicle, but then we have to figure out to purchase the vehicle too.
Well, so now I was wondering, and this was just kind of a brainstorm one night, so there is an association, it's called the Winnebago County EMS Association. And the 3 ambulances, we're getting that going again to kind of help with centralized just like supply and scheduling and that kind of thing. I didn't know exactly how or who it was paid to. I know it went into the EMS trust fund, but can that be, with the name on the grant, is it legal to run it through the EMS, Winnebago County EMS Association?
Is that a nonprofit of some sort?
Yes, the association is. I didn't know with tax IDs, or I didn't know, like, I don't know. That's why it's a question. I have no
See,
idea.
what I'm worried about with this is Rob Sand says that a county government can't give
Mhm.
anything to a
A
nonprofit.
nonprofit, yep.
So with this $70,000, how is this gonna work? That's what I'm very worried about.
Mhm.
I
Without you guys retaining the ownership of it,
right,
it could be considered a gift.
right. So I don't, like, but do I wanna, does the county wanna own a Lucas machine?
Yeah, no.
No.
But it would be in our vehicle, that's the only thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, we wouldn't own the Lucas machine, we would just own the.
The vehicle.
but if it was paid for with the grant money, then you would technically.
That's right, because it was, the
That
grant
was part of
included
the
Lucas
grant.
device.
Gotcha.
So, you know, and that's kind of, and when you go on the flip side of it, protecting the ambulance, we're not gonna be putting money in to maintain and operate the vehicle if, you know, and you guys don't wanna put the money in to maintain and operate the vehicle because it's, you're not gonna have the
What
budget
is the
for it.
budget here? Do you know what the
It was,
vehicle's
I
gonna
think it was
cost?
70,000.
I mean, you're talking everything.
Well, that's what the grant was for, was
Yeah,
70,000.
I mean, but the actual cost to get this going.
I would have to look back at
The
thing.
Lucas was,
The Lucas, so we own a Lucas, we haven't paid for it yet, but we had the opportunity to buy an almost new refurbished Lucas, the new model, for 12,000 from Stryker, which I gotta pay that bill. And then we also had the opportunity to buy back a monitor that we traded in from Stryker, which that was just, we didn't get the trade-in credit for it, so. But we have a Life Pack 15 and we have a monitor and we have all the bags, like we have all the equipment for the inside minus the radios and the lights. We just don't have the vehicle.
Think the dollar amount of all this stuff that's gonna be.
was the vehicle like 40-some thousand or?
Like receipts I could actually produce for you over the last year. I think the vehicle, a police interceptor Explorer, I think, you remember, Billy, was it 36,000?
It was 30-something.
It was, I can't
If I
remember.
right.
It's between 32 and 38,000.
See, and I wanted to say 38 for some reason.
Yeah. And then I think I did 10 for the lights and graphics and radio. So that was 48, and then the Lucas was 12, and I had the Life Pack 15 listed at 15,000. But we ended up with one cheaper, and then the bags were like $2,000, I think, that we bought, and then
What's the
what
value
else?
of that monitor?
The monitor, one that age, probably in that $10,000 range, I would say. Brand new, they're like
38 or something
36
like
to
that.
42,
Yeah.
depending on the options. So we traded, Forest City Ambulance bought 4 new monitors, and we traded 3 old ones in, and Life Pack let us keep the old monitors at a reduced cost, and so I said, yeah, we'll keep 2 of them. So we have actually a spare sitting out at the garage too.
So do we need to make a call to Elizabeth and ask her how we can do something like this, or?
Well, what I'm actually wondering if we can do is there any way that we can give this money back to the region and have the region write a check to the ambulance service or to the paramedics, or so that it just goes through them so that we don't have to be in the middle of it?
That would be requiring board action on their end of it, which slows things up too.
I get it,
Which is fine if it slows it up. I don't have a problem with it slowing it up.
As long as you
It's
get
just,
something.
yeah, well, and I want to do it so everyone comes out okay and not in trouble. Like, I'm not trying to pull a fast
because
one.
there is no Winnebago County EMS. So the check was written to an entity that doesn't exist.
But we still deposited.
We did, but
We've already done the deed.
I think the vehicle needs to stay in Winnebago County's name. Because if things, for whatever reason, go south, the vehicle should stay with the county.
We can't
so
just
then
do a
how do
lease.
we,
We can't do a lease to them somehow?
I think a reasonable lease.
I think it's.
but then it should, the check should have been made to Winnebago County. I don't know, I need
In
to talk
effect,
to
it
Kelsey
says-
about it.
It says Winnebago County EMS, well, we have a EMS trust fund, so
Okay,
it
I
is
don't
Winnebago
know.
County
I
EMS.
just-
Well,
I don't know.
I think it's, well,
I need to
Ask
talk to the
Kelsey.
county attorney.
yes, ask Kelsey. But there, it's all been out in the open, nothing is nefarious here.
Yeah,
It's all been documented
yeah.
of what we're trying to
the
do.
base price of the vehicle was $47,165.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going up too, because that was January when I got that quote, so,
Yeah, I'm sure it's more than that.
I'm sure it's gone up, which is fine, and it's just, and I know we visited a little bit at Forest City Ambulance about it, and we're not against the county per se leasing it, as long as there's, and us doing the upkeep and the maintenance on it and operating it, but, as long as there's an end game plan, that there's some value, there's a reason we're investing our money into it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, at the end
So
of it.
after a 3
Yeah.
or 4 year lease.
After 5 years or whatever,
Who owns it, who gets
Yeah.
it, what's the buyout?
what's the
type
buyout,
thing.
what's that kind of thing. We're not against doing it, it's just, we want to make sure we're getting something in the end, and we're just not dumping.
You're getting $478,000.
No, you're getting, yeah, you're right, we are, and you're getting a paramedic out of the deal and an EMT. Hey, you know what? The weekend went well for as crazy as it was.
I wouldn't call that well.
Huh?
In Winnebago County maybe, but
Yeah,
not so much Hancock.
well, I mean, everyone got an ambulance for what they needed an ambulance for with lots of paramedics, so.
In your world, that's doing well, right?
Yep, we did as best as we could. You're not gonna have a positive outcome on everything.
Yeah.
And we even managed to, help out Britt Ambulance. They didn't even have a second crew. We ended up leaving the Pucker Brush Parade to go to Crystal Lake.
Oh, what day was that then? That was
Saturday. In 5 minutes, we sent an ambulance to Scarville and we sent an ambulance to Crystal Lake. So it happens at the most inopportune times. So yeah, I just wanted to get the talk started with the vehicle so we can get moving on it.
So we still have things to due on the 28E, we have things to do on that vehicle, so hopefully,
I'm hoping that we can have something at the next meeting. Like I said, the ambulance agreed to the 2080, we accepted it, we voted on it, we were willing to sign it if you guys were gonna do action today on it. Mentally, like, just for my own, is this, Kelsey and I made a comment, in the 28E, it talks about July 1st, with July 1st having come and gone, is this a retroactive thing, or are we needing to change the date on that 28E?
won't it be changed the day we see the final and approve it? And then
But
it'll
the
be
function
effective?
of the
Oh,
agreement,
the agreement.
Yeah, because I think in the agreement somewhere it talks about it taking effect on July 1st of 23. And that was just something we went, well, I don't know if it's gonna be a retroactive thing. Is there gonna be like a reimbursement thing back to July 1 for the medics? Like, we didn't, it was just something that I didn't know if we never talked about it. So I didn't know if that had caught anyone's eye.
well, I know we've discussed it occasionally, touched on it, that, you know, and I imagine the city council doesn't have it in their budget to fund it as a revenue, or without the revenue.
Yeah, without the revenue. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that had been seen by everyone, because we talked
But it's
about
not
it.
gonna be fully implemented till staffing is acquired and.
Well, my thoughts were, I guess, from a management standpoint on the EMS world is if the only thing that's holding this up right now is the fact of the signature on the 2080 and knowing that we're gonna go retroactive on the date and the reimbursement, do we need to start the financial end of the world? Do we need to stop billing for paramedic intercepts and start auto launching a paramedic now? Like, that's something we can do if it's gonna be a retroactive reimbursement and get it rolling today versus, because there were a couple instances over the weekend where Buffalo Center would have benefited from an auto launch paramedic. They had a car accident and, then you end up, it's in a weird position, so then they end up meeting somewhere where we don't normally meet, and it could have been avoided if the paramedic was dispatched at the same time. So I didn't know, if it's gonna be a retroactive thing, I'd say we can start working towards getting the implementation and stopping the billing and.
I mean, I thought that was the plan, but that's up to you guys.
That's,
Retroactive?
To July,
Yeah,
July
I've
1st.
always thought it was that.
Okay,
If this-
so then,
that's how I'd like to see it.
then as far as I'm concerned, I think Forest City, we're gonna start trying to get the auto dispatch up and running, and, I mean, it may take a hot moment to get everyone in position to do it, but hopefully in the next 7 days, we can be auto dispatch and not billing for the 150 and so on and so forth,
I
okay?
mean, I don't think there's any reason not to, even though this isn't signed.
Right.
But it's still,
Yeah.
if we keep it as July 1st.
As we keep it as July 1st.
The reimbursements are
Should be,
available.
Okay, no, that was my main
that's what I'd like to see.
question, okay? Because we can even try to get our advanced DMT that we have hired in Forest City, we can try to get him around. I know Buffalo Center's been struggling a couple days this last week to get coverage, so we can start sending him. I know our goal was to get the association up and running so we can figure out a panel. I know Carla spoke about wanting to be on the panel for interviewing for the EMTs. But the association, we were just gonna try to, here's the 3 reps, so we can get interviewing going and stuff like that. Because I have had some people contacting me with interest for employment, so, EMT wise.
Good.
So,
Sounds like a plan.
alrighty, we'll get working on that direction then. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Stay safe.
Will do. You too.
Consider for approval payroll claims.
think there's so many questions with this vehicle, like, if we're leasing it, who's gonna insure it? Who's gonna-
Gotta find out what typically is done and
Yeah,
what's
that's what would
acceptable.
be nice to know is from mental health is how counties are handling these.
I don't know, it'd be worth talking, for you to talk to Melissa at the region and find out how the other counties have implemented their monies.
Yeah.
So is it kind of unprecedented that we've never received something like this that we use?
Well, the rules changed a couple of years ago, so.
Yeah. Rules have changed.
With the whole leasing thing?
Well,
Well,
no,
we never got grant money for somebody else.
it's like even the, of course, the historical side, it's
It's in the
exempted.
code that we can do that.
Yeah, they're different, but.
Let's call Elizabeth. That lady is so impressive.
make a motion to approve the payroll claims.
I'll second.
Derby and a second from Smith, to approve the payroll claims. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anything else? If not, we are adjourned.